Spoiler alert: this story contains spoilers for Season 8, Episode 8 of The Walking Dead. In a chaotic mid-season finale that pulled some of its punches, The Walking Dead landed a sucker punch on viewers at the very end. It wasn't the major character slaughter we might have expected, with Negan and his saviors regaining the upper hand on Rick and his allies. It was the promise of a death to come. Turns out Rick's son, Carl, was bitten by a zombie while recruiting new character Sadiq 2 episodes ago. And no, they can't just chop off his leg a la Herschel. The bite is on his side, as he revealed to Rick and Michonne at the end of the episode. So Carl, who's been played by 18-year-old Chandler Riggs since the show began in 2010, has one more episode to live. Best pack some tissues for the mid-season premiere on Feb. 25. In the meantime, here's a look at what went on in Episode 8, How It's Gotta Be. Back at the sanctuary, we picked up where we left off last week, with the look of utter dismay on Rick's face as he realizes the sanctuary is a walker-free zone and none of his lookouts are answering their walkie-talkies. Still, he and the scavengers approach the desert-looking compound and are promptly shot at. The scavengers run away, leaving Rick pinned down behind a car until Carol and Jerry drive up in the nick of time to collect Rick. This raises a couple of questions. What are Carol and Jerry doing driving past the sanctuary at that particular moment? And after all the hassle Rick went through bargaining to get the scavengers back in the war, being imprisoned in a storage container in his underwear and nearly being sliced and diced by a spiked helmet-wearing walker, it was all for this? The scavengers bailing at the first sign of trouble? So what was the point of that whole side plot? Scenes of Rick at the sanctuary are intercut with flashbacks of Carl trying to convince his dad that the end result of this all-out war has to be more than just killing all the saviors. Finding some way forward, that's harder. That's something more. That's how it's gotta be, says Carl. This back and forth was majorly distracting and seemed pointless until we got to the end of the episode and realized that Carl was dying. Destination Oceanside, we last saw Aaron and Enid driving off on some vague mission to ensure the Alexandrians win the war, which turns out to be a new bid to recruit the all-female Oceanside community. There are some flaws in this plan, namely that the Oceansiders usually kill first and ask questions later, and the Alexandrians aren't their favorite folks, having stolen all of their guns. But Enid tries to counter that last disadvantage by detouring to a distillery to hijack a truck full of goodies for the Oceansiders. Then Enid shoots and kills their leader, Netanya, as the latter is about to dispatch Aaron with a spear. Distraught Oceansiders take Aaron and Enid prisoner. I can't imagine what twisted logic the showrunners will employ to get the Oceansiders into the war, but I'm sure they'll come up with something, otherwise, what's the point of reintroducing these characters? Back at Alexandria, Daryl and Tara are congratulating themselves on their decision to diverge from Rick's plan and ram a truck into the wall of the sanctuary, allowing it to be overrun with walkers. It worked. They're gonna give up, Daryl tells Michonne. Except it didn't. As night falls, Negan and the saviors come banging on Alexandria's gate. Let's just cut the cow shit, says Negan. You lose, it's over. He's giving them 3 minutes to open the gate and then line up outside their houses and apologize, and the person with the lamest apology will be killed. Carl, who we saw earlier looking sad and writing a note to Rick, has a plan. He goes to the gate to stall Negan, offering himself up to be killed as punishment, while the others load into trucks that they bust through Alexandria's back walls and through a ring of saviors' cars. Negan orders every house in Alexandria blown up except Rick's. He also wants Carl found, but Carl gets away with the help of smoke bombs and disappears into a sewer. Back at the Kingdom, King Ezekiel's domain has been overrun by saviors, and the king himself is hiding out after hearing the ruckus outside the theater where he's been holed up having a pity party. The Kingdomites are told the saviors are taking over their homes and they'll be sent to the sanctuary to clean up dead zombies and such. But first, they have 5 minutes to hand over Ezekiel or things will get traumatic. Ezekiel takes matter into his own hands by blowing up some fuel, then roaring up in a school bus as a diversion so his people can run away. But he refuses to let Carol rescue him, telling her to save them like you saved me, closing the gates in her face and surrendering to the saviors. I doubt that Ezekiel is going to be killed and strung up at the sanctuary, as threatened, since we saw Morgan eavesdropping on the saviors just outside the kingdom's gate, which likely means a rescue mission is at hand. The hilltop defies for some unfathomable reason. Maggie and Jesus and a bunch of hilltoppers are out driving around in the dark when they see a tree blocking their way. Maggie realizes right away it's a trap, but they're surrounded by saviors before they can turn around. Simon is holding Jerry prisoner in the back of a cube van and threatens to shoot him, put Maggie in a coffin, execute her and put her on a spike in front of the sanctuary unless she takes her people back to Hilltop and continues growing food for the saviors. Just to emphasize his point, Simon kills some guy in the back seat of Maggie's car named Neil, whom we've never seen before. Maggie asks Simon a question we'd all like the answer to. How did the saviors escape the sanctuary after it was overrun by walkers? Simon doesn't really say, although it has to do with Eugene, who obviously repaired the loudspeakers since we hear music that's being used to lead the rest of the zombie herd away. Maggie agrees to Simon's demands and asks to take the coffin with her to bury Neil. But instead, she executes one of the saviors being held prisoner at Hilltop, puts him in the coffin and orders it left where the saviors will find it, with the words, "We have 38 more. Stand down," scrawled on the lid. Eugene's crisis of conscience. Eugene can't sleep, not even after he guzzles some wine. Next thing you know, he's waking up a still ailing Father Gabriel and the Hilltop's kidnapped doctor, and giving them keys to a car parked outside the north gate, the same gate from which the guard is absent, having been given a dose of laxatives by Eugene. But he refuses Gabriel's plea to come to Hilltop with them, with good reason. It's hard to picture Eugene rejoining his former traveling companions, as he called them, after so wholeheartedly betraying them in the service of Negan. Alexandria Part 2. Savior Turncoat. Dwight helps Daryl and Michonne and the rest of the Alexandria refugees kill a bunch of saviors by leading them into an ambush and shooting some of them himself. But one of the saviors shoots Dwight in the arm for his treachery before escaping. Unable to return to the sanctuary, Dwight convinces the Alexandrians to take him to their underground hiding place. Rick finally returns to what's left of Alexandria and goes straight to his house in search of Carl and Judith, where he instead finds Negan and Lucille. Would the fact it's the only one standing not be a tip-off? Rick and Negan fight, and, at one point, Rick gets hold of Lucille, but it ends with Rick being thrown through a window, having handily managed to grab his gun before his equally handy exit. He wanders off and finds Michonne, who's turning a savior who accosted her into sushi with her sword. Together they head to the sewer, where they find Carl looking pale and sweaty. "I brought him here," says Carl, when Rick notices new guy Sadiq in a corner. "That's how it happened," he adds before lifting his shirt and displaying the teeth marks in his flesh. This will hardly make Rick more accepting of this stranger now that he knows he played a role in his son's imminent death. So The Walking Dead is finally killing off a major character, albeit one whose demise doesn't bode well for the post-apocalyptic future given his youth and relative optimism. Showrunner Scott M. Gimple says Carl still has some business to attend to in February's mid-season premiere, but there will be no miracles. Carl is definitely going to die.